Good evening, Mr. Bond fans, and welcome once again. It's been some time since my last Bond 25 update vlog, so I thought I'd address some of the stuff that's been going on lately, because a lot has happened since I last talked about the upcoming Bond film. So obviously the last time I was talking about this, Danny Boyle and his screenwriter had left the project and everything was in kind of a state of flux. It was quite a nerve-wracking time, but Danny Boyle has been replaced with Cary Fukunaga, who is a director that I don't have much, there's no polite way of saying this, I just ain't seen any of his work. I mean, certainly he's not like a household name like I think Danny Boyle is, or even Sam Mendes, to be honest. And yeah, I've seen a lot of fans on the various social medias being sort of like, dismissive of Cary because, oh, I've never heard of this guy, who is this guy that they've got? And to be honest, I don't think that the Bond series ever truly needs a name director. Like, I think some of the best Bond films have been directed by people who are just genuinely good, unpretentious directors. I don't know much about Cary's stuff, I'm gonna have to check some of it out. But I like that he's young, I hope he's gonna bring a fresh take to things. I'm quite excited, to be honest. And back in writing duties are Neil Purvis and Robert Wade. At the moment, they're the only two writers that have been confirmed by Eon. It wouldn't surprise me if at some point in the process someone else is brought on to, give the dialogue a polish, tweak some plot details, something like that, but they're back. I swear they've been saying, oh, no more Bond films ever again since, Skyfall, but, they just keep coming back, and you know what, they've written some of my absolute, complete, ultimate favourite movies in the franchise. They've also written two which I consider to be at the very bottom of the ranking, so they could go either way. They seem to be going on, I like the odd-numbered films that they write, starting with The World Is Not Enough and going onwards. It's the odd ones that I like, even ones I don't. This is going to be an odd one, so maybe it'll, maybe I'll love it. I don't know, but it's just really exciting to know that the film is back on track and even has a new release date of Valentine's Day 2020. So just a 3-month delay, that's okay. It's kind of screwy when you look at, the timeline of the Craig era, though, and it's been, 2006, 2008, 2012, 2015, and then 2020 is just these big gaps. It's just, and also I'm surprised that they would, I guess they needed to take the time to address all the changes that would need to take place in production to accommodate the new director and possibly new script. Who knows if it's a completely new script or not, but the time needed to take all those things into account obviously accounted for the 3-month pushback in the release date, but I always just assumed that this is going to be Craig's last film, so they're going to want a new Bond film out with a new Bond at some point, and if you miss, 2022, the, big anniversary of the franchise, the 60th anniversary of the franchise since Dr. No, that would be a hugely missed opportunity, and just, they'd better, start thinking about Bond 26 pretty sharpish if they want to meet that particular anniversary date. Otherwise, I don't know what else you can do in that year, because we've had big 40th anniversary celebrations, we've had big 50th anniversary celebrations for Die Another Day and Skyfall. It would be a shame if they didn't have a film out in 2022. So that's some of the main crew that's been, set in stone since the whole kerfuffle with Danny Boyle, and other crew members are obviously going to be announced over the next few months, ramping up to filming. I still say my nightly prayers for David Arnold to return as composer, but aside from that news, and the main reason that I wanted to make this video actually is some of the casting details that have come out as of late. So it looks fairly certain that Ralph Fiennes, Ben Whishaw, and Naomi Harris are going to return as M, Q, and Moneypenny respectively. All good with that, really good, solid bunch of MI6 regulars. There's nothing I've heard so far about Rory Kinnear reprising his role as Bill Tanner, which I find quite interesting. I do wonder if because those roles have had bigger, roles in the films as of late. So I do kind of wonder if they feel like maybe Bill Tanner is just one member of the Bond Super Friends team too many. And indeed, there are some reports that were talking about how I think it was either the studio or the producers or something were considering making the Bond films more of a team sort of deal, like Mission Impossible. And I think that's a terrible idea. I don't know if that's just much more than a rumour at this current time, but obviously the last Mission Impossible film was super successful, and it wouldn't be a surprise if the Bond series looked to take some inspiration from that, but I don't think that the solution to that is changing the Bond formula. The one thing that I love about the series is that it is this one guy. Like, most of the time he has his base in London, and he has, M and Q and Moneypenny and Tanner, but then they give him his mission, and he has to go into a completely new scenario, a completely new setting, completely new location, with a bunch of people he may or may not know, and I think that's part of the exciting thing, is this one man travelling around the world, meeting these colourful and eccentric characters in all the places that he goes, and if you have to bring along MI6 regulars and have them doing stuff, I just can't see it being anything other than kind of tangled and messy, and more importantly, just not a Bond film. There have also been reports that Lea Seydoux from Spectre, she played Madeline Swan in Spectre, could be returning in Bond 25. Now, if you have seen my Spectre review, you will know I'm not a fan of that character at all. I think Lea Seydoux is a perfectly good actress. I've really liked her in other things that I've seen her in. I think she's great. But that character... oh, I really don't like Madeline Swan. Just how the whole film, constantly tried to make you think that, she was more to Bond than just a quick shag. I got no sense of chemistry between her and Craig, certainly not when you compare it to Eva Green, and I mean, perhaps this is going to be an unfair comparison, because Casino Royale is, a huge part of the success of that film is the chemistry between those two actors. Seydoux, I don't get any of that from, and I'm gonna go into it open-minded. It's gonna be the first time that a Bond girl has returned to play the same character since Sylvia Trench in From Russia with Love, which is pretty exciting. I really, really hope that they don't just bring her back to kill her off and then have that spark Bond on a revenge mission, because I don't want her to die. I would actually quite like it, because we've never seen Bond and a girl just have their relationship break down, and as I've been reading through the Ian Fleming stories recently, I really like that, for example, at the start of From Russia with Love, they talk about how, at the end of the previous book, Bond got together with Tiffany Case, and there's just this few pages about, how, it didn't work out, and Tiffany ended up going off with this other guy, she went back to the States, all this kind of stuff, and a part of me would just kind of like to see a Bond girl relationship, just break down, and I think I don't need anything terribly exciting to happen out of it, but even if it says something about Bond's character, I want them to use her in an interesting or surprising way, rather than just killing her off for the sake of revenge. And I kind of have to believe that the filmmakers are aware of that. They don't want to do that because that is so obvious, but then these are the same people who decided to make it a big secret that Christoph Waltz was playing Blofeld, so maybe I'm giving them a little bit too much credit in that department. I'm going to go in with an open mind, but if she's killed in the first 10 minutes in the pre-credit sequence, or she actually hangs around for the whole film, which, who knows, maybe she will, maybe they'll have Bond be monogamous. I mean, that would be different, I suppose. I'm looking forward to seeing how they can use her in an interesting way, but if the pre-credit sequence is Bond and her have gotten married and Christoph Waltz zooms past shooting, I'm just... no, I don't want to do that. I want something new. I don't want the same thing again. So with the Bond 25 chat out of the way, I just wanted to also talk about a book that I received a few months ago, Some Kind of Hero, The Remarkable Story of the James Bond Films by Matthew Field and A.J. Chowdhury. I got sent this a couple of months ago, and it's been kind of my nighttime reading. I'm like, if you've seen my other videos, you know that I'm making my way through the Ian Fleming stories right now, so I kind of do those in my commute and do this, because, I mean, this isn't a very commute-friendly book, I'll give it that. I'm pretty sure there's Kindle versions available. But this is, I mean, the blurb describes it as the first biography of the making of the James Bond films, drawing on over 100 new interviews with the cast and crew. And biography of the making of the James Bond films is really the best way to describe it. It makes for a wonderful companion piece to the DVD extras, you know, the Inside documentary series, where they, like, you know, Inside Octopussy, Inside Moonraker, all those things, featuring lots of interviews with the cast and crew and lots of backgrounds. It felt like I was experiencing a different version of those documentaries reading this, like even in my mind just visualizing what I was reading about. It was really cool. The advantage that this particular publication has over those documentaries, though, is that it can be more canny and frank than a lot of Bond histories I've read and seen documentaries about, which is quite refreshing. And I don't mean that in like, oh, it's so salacious and gossipy, but I just appreciate that I never felt like I was reading a sanitized history. And I like that. I mean, there's some, like, very unflattering comments in here about Roger Spottiswoode, the director of Tomorrow Never Dies, which were quite something. Him and Judi Dench have a little altercation, which I won't spoil, but it's quite funny. The book begins with the very inception of James Bond as a cinematic, you know, a figure on screen, and takes you right through to, I mean, this was published before the whole Danny Boyle kerfuffle happened on Bond 25, so there is an epilogue in the book which sort of talks about, oh, let's see what Danny Boyle does, and it's like, well, you know, these things can't be helped. But it really does take you through all the films and all of the, like, key instances in between films, if that makes any sense. So, you know, they talk about the whole Kevin McClory Thunderball thing, they talk about how Saltzman and Broccoli's, the producer's relationship, kind of broke down in between The Man with the Golden Gun and The Spy Who Loved Me, and that's all great. Like, I know some of those inside DVD documentaries better than I do a lot of films. I've seen them that many times. And the fact that this had a lot of new information, fresh information, was really wonderful, because I must admit that I've heard some of those kinds of stories multiple times, and this found a really interesting new angle on it. And like I say, the frankness was really appreciated. But without a doubt, my favourite section of the book is, sort of like the last third, I suppose, where they talk about the making of the Pierce Brosnan films and the Daniel Craig films. Those films, released on DVD and Blu-ray, don't really come with the same level of intricate documentary feature that the Connery through Dalton era does. And that's really disappointing, because I like people looking back retrospectively at their work, looking back at their films and talking about the challenges that they faced and what they enjoyed and all these kinds of things. So this actually really made up for that lack of content on the DVDs and Blu-rays. I just kind of wanted to plug this before Christmas, obviously, because if you are looking for a gift for a Bond fan, this will be much appreciated. If you are a Bond fan with any interest in the making of this fantastic film series, then this is a must. This is the Bible, pretty much, of the making of certainly my favourite film series of all time, and I really can't recommend it enough. It's a fantastic read. So that's it for this time, Bond fans. Do let me know in the comments below if you agree, disagree with anything that I've talked about in this video. Especially the Léa Seydoux thing, because that is really... I see such a wide range that I don't actually know what the consensus is. I don't know if the consensus of Bond fans like wants her back or doesn't want her back. It's a really interesting subject, and I'm curious to know more about what you think. And especially, like, if you are excited because of the prospect of having her come back just to be killed, then why? Why is anyone excited by that prospect? But until next time, Bond fans, so long for now.